All right, Ethan Whitfield of Wild Horizon Bar. Thanks for jumping on the Witness Business podcast. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. We're glad you're here with us. We like to start off pretty much every episode with this question, so get ready.
Okay.
What would you say is the worst job you've ever had?
I worked in a warehouse in high school assembling lighting fixtures and then delivering so-called lighting engineer products to construction sites. So mundane, so boring.
The
Hanging out
initial
in fixtures, yeah, it was crazy.
the initial impression is, sometimes we ask the follow up. So, what did you get from it? And it's sounding like, at least preliminarily, it's just I didn't want to do that the rest of my life.
Yeah, what did I get out of it? When you're not a fit in your co-working environment, leave.
That's good advice from the
And
jump.
leave quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The old expression, Japanese expression, when you get on the wrong train, get out as soon as possible because it's the cheaper ticket back.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love
good.
that. I guess to get us rolling here, give us a quick, like maybe elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do
So
today?
Wild
'Cause obviously,
Horizon,
not light fixtures aside. Today,
yeah.
who are you and what do you do?
Ethan Whitfield, retired military entrepreneur, background always been, if there's a gap in the market or something that I've done, I fill it with, I figured out a way to kind of do it. My military background, I mean, even from a kid, it was that. So now what I'm doing now is Wild Horizon is a meat-based protein bar. We use only no plant, no whey. It's all beef. Our process breaks it down, all natural regenerative beef made from a kind of the idea was from a pemmican recipe, a Native American recipe. That's basically what on the frontiers how they would eat their meat non-harvest time, right? They only had a hunting season and how they eat all the beef and protein. They made pemmican, and it was basically ultra dehydrated food reconstituted and sealed in beef tallow or bear grease, whatever they had at the time. So on my own gaps of what I would need to do on my expedition or my expeditions and hiking and just different things that I need to do, I came up with this product and started going forward with it. The more interest I saw out there in the market and the lack of said product available for people.
Yeah, I was reading your story originally about how you were on a hike in the Andes, and then ended up having to cross borders, and you were carrying a bag of meat, and customs was like, what is this guy doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you cross borders and you fly international, number one things that you usually can't bring in customs is agricultural products, right? You see that every
Right.
time. So now
Yeah.
I've got, I think I had 12 pounds of meat essentially from the U.S. It was elk, so 100% U.S. stuff, non-indigenous to. I both had across Chile and Argentina with it, but it wasn't frozen packaged flank steaks, so it was in this formed like protein bars. So, I just kind of played coy and went on with I'm just going to make myself as annoying as possible just to skate through customs because they don't know what this is. And I know they don't. They know it's meat. So I just said energy bar for them, no habla español and energy bar. And kept the iPods in or the earphones in, like I wasn't paying attention. Like
So this is totally normal. This is just
yeah,
another day for me.
yeah, that's exactly the play I was doing. Like what? It was like, oh no, like not nonchalant about it. Again, one of the tricks in crossing borders that I learned in the military, I just carried it on in the private world.
Well, before we go any further, really quick, I want to say thank you for your service because it was more than just your service. You also were decorated in service with Silver Star, Bronze Star, and Purple Heart. So thank you so much for your service.
I appreciate it, guys.
Yes, agreed.
But beyond that, so you have this experience where you're hiking, you're carrying this meat, you're making a ruckus, going between the different customs. But what was it that kind of after that adventure that made you say, well, you know what, there may be a need within the market here, and this may be something that I could even create a viable business with. Because it's one thing to have a hassle whenever you have a personal experience, but it's another to realize that other people are experiencing the same thing as you and you can meet a need.
Yeah. So the first thing was on the hike. So, in Patagonia, it's pretty rugged terrain. It's elevations up and down at 34-degree slopes, just no flatness, and winds just hitting you. There's some wind time on the face of these mountains. It felt like 70 miles an hour. So I'm moving, and what got me about the product more than anything is that's all I was eating. And I was completely satiated and never hit any energy bonk levels, no lack of it. And I'm carrying 50 pounds, just moving at least 12 hours a day, constantly. So I'm putting a lot of output in, burning a lot of calories. And I was a little bit it was an unknown for me. It's like, how is this going to work? One, it was almost my only choice because the cube space in my pack was filled out with it. So I needed something really nutrient dense and small to carry in this pack kind of thing. So that was the first thing. Is like halfway through it, I just kind of was chilling out one evening in my campsite eating, and I was like, holy cow, like I've got plenty of energy and I feel great. Like I'm waking up almost like fresh every day. So I was like, all right, this is an actual thing. Like go figure, ancestors knew what they were doing, and so that was my first key indicator. Didn't think much about it. I had some work to do in Santiago, Chile, so I just kind of made that a trick before. And so when I got back, I had probably a couple pounds left, and I was just kind of handing them out to colleagues that I was working with there, and everyone was kind of like, "Oh yeah, this is actually not what I was thinking. This is pretty good." And again, still didn't really think much about it. I was just going to make it for myself, go on. But started to meet some just by coincidence, key people in the industry, CPG industry. And like, I would meet one person who was experienced, had a good exit in a CPG brand. And I remember I was at this one party here in Austin, just a little barbecue, and pretty prominent CPG founder here was there, and we were talking about it. And I was just going over, it's like, yeah, the costs are going to be crazy. Like on it, my COGS would be astronomical. I have no idea what kind of profits would go on, where the margins would be ridiculous, consumer based and all this. And then he was just like, actually, like, he's pulling up all these other companies. This company sold out all the time. This company sold out. This company just raised this. And I was like, okay. So that is a barrier that I imposed on myself, but I didn't do any research on it. I didn't think about it at all.
Which is a great point. The fact that, a lot of people self-impose barriers.
Yeah, 100%. Even on that. And it wasn't, it's always, and I wasn't looking for something to do. I was, fine what I was doing and everything. So it wasn't really a thing to do. That I see that a lot with people too. It's like, I need this great idea. Like, I just want to, they're eager to do something. So they throw something at a wall and maybe not good. So it's not really like, wouldn't be so eager to, it's a good balance. You got to find, a viable product and something you're passionate about, kind of slam it in there the same way. So then I was just kind of like, all right, well, how can I scale this? Well, I can't use elk. There's other reasons why, it's got to be farmed in order to be, actual certified and go across borders and sell wholesale and all these things. So I was like, all right, so I got to have commercially produced products farmed. So now I'm only looking at beef, bison to begin with. So I'll start there. I went with beef just for the scale and the cost of it to begin with, and just started playing around with recipes. And I was doing some work, and our team would gather, and about 30 members or so. So I was using these little work gatherings to test my products. So like each one of these things, I would have about 50 recipes ready to go, in a little like Mylar sealed bags of all these things, just to see, okay, is this a product? So I just give it out to everybody, and I, have my batch and have a thing, and I was writing down, all right, product, this, that, viable. All right, go. So keep moving forward. There is a need for this. That was my first step. So, all right, actually can be a product here. So I took a step with it and then started just peeling all that down into like, all right, how can I produce this at scale? I mean, you can run a company and you can do it through Etsy and farmers markets and local for years and be a good business with that. But the more I looked into this specific product, the larger gap and need I saw in the actual consumer market within the United States in our health and nutrition. And I had a medical background, so I was very, very familiar with our medical system and peeling back what the first principle of all that is, and it's your health and nutrition, essentially. So I was like, all right, so that could be something that I could fill and find that need and have good purpose and fulfill my ideals with it and still have a passion and create something out there.
Now, as far as the creation of the recipe that you were going for, I do think there would be a little bit of value in specifically defining pemmican. And I know that you kind of touched on a little bit the idea of meat and then the tallow, but then there can also be berries and other things mixed in as well, right? Because
Right.
I don't want anybody, as they're listening here, they might be thinking, is this like a jerky bar? And that is not the case. So just wanted to know, why did you settle on pemmican as defined? And then what was your original ideation for some of the recipes that you were coming up with, and how did you end up settling on your final recipe?
Yeah, so the first recipe was straight on pemmican, Native American recipe. Just Googled how to make pemmican, and so it was very much berries. It had nuts in there. I would just take dehydrated berries and put them in with the elk, crushed up some nuts and put them all in there, and kind of made a bar with everything. As I started going forward in actual production, allergy is a huge thing, and it wasn't necessary for my formulation and nutrition and the actual binding or anything of the product. So nuts went away, and then the actual whole berries. I wanted to keep in line with traditional pemmican recipe. Why pemmican is so viable, being self-stable for so long, is the lack of water. So you've got to keep that water index down as low as possible, so mold and bacteria can't grow. So berries, high moisture. So I switched from a freeze dried powder basis essentially. And that was kind of the evolution from that. And several different evolutions of how this and that went. But it morphed away from more the traditional into, okay, what can be the market, and hit basically what I'm trying to do is high macro, high nutritional content that's easily transportable, and I can make it at scale. And so that's where we landed on the final recipe, essentially.
And so I think it'd be valuable to know, because you've only been in production for a few months now. When did this idea occur to you, and how long did it take? I guess we can do math, but when did that idea first initially occur? I'm just curious how long it's taken to get to this point.
So this trip was January of 24. Hit this barbecue in May of 24. I start doing test products in June and July, and formed the company in August of 24, and get the actual formulation of 3 SKUs, the wild berry, barbecue, and jalapeno heat, down in about November, and launched a pre-sale in December, and bought all the manufacturing equipment around December as well.
So you hit the ground running. I mean, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people will mull over an idea for months or years, and it
Oh
sounds
yeah,
like you had the idea,
Not the case.
got some feedback, some positive feedback, and then just hit the ground running.
yeah. It's I see a lot of the paralysis by analysis um, with so many people, and in the higher educated, higher skilled people, I see even more of it there. To be honest, it's kind of the ignorance is bliss case in entrepreneurship. Like I don't know, a lot of unknown unknowns, right? So I'm just going to move forward and figure it out. Luckily, I kind of always had that in the base of me, and so my whole, I guess, how I live is, if it's in my head, I want to get it out. I don't want to stuck on my deathbed with all these great ideas.
Yeah.
Like when
Right.
they fail, great experience, knowledge. That didn't work. I'm okay with it. Move on.
And no regret on your deathbed.
Exactly. That's the whole thing. Like, I mean, we all have the same amount of time here. Like how you spend it is what that story looks like at the end.
Yeah.
Nope. When Steve
Um,
dies, he's not going to leak any ideas. Let's just say that he's getting
Yeah,
them all out
good.
now.
I got them
When
all
you,
out. At
you
least
said the cork
Kyle.
idea, I was like, oh, I like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Kyle at least hears them all. So they may not all get out into the world, but they'll all
I
get
do
into
the world
Kyle's
a
brain.
solid. Yeah, I do the world a solid, and
He
I
just
hear them
shuts
all
them down.
first.
Well,
So
there's yeah, I
But there is value in partnership. So I'd love to talk a little bit about how Scott comes into the mix too. Do you
yeah,
want to talk about how he came into the fold and how he's been additive and everything like that?
absolutely. It's so true. You can't do anything alone. Um, and I don't care who out there says they can. Like there's always support that is leaned on. And I know my weaknesses. My weaknesses is marketing and branding, and how to convey. I'm really not on social media. Don't follow what's going on and all these things. So that's a huge gap that I have personally in that business side. So Scott and I met at a men's leadership retreat in Hawaii. And so I just come back from work in Europe. I had a friend that ran this event in there, and there's personal backstories. I don't know if we want to get into that, like how I ended up at this men's retreat. I'm happy to if you'd like to, but it'll steer the conversation a different direction. So I go to this men's leadership retreat in Hawaii. They kind of pair you up in groups. Scott and I are in the same group. During the retreat, you don't talk about what you do in the life in your world or anything. You're just kind of there, kind of embodying the whole program. So the last day, we're just kind of packing up, talking, and it's kind of like, oh, where are you from? Well, I'm from Austin. It's like, no kidding, I'm from Austin. That's where I live. So the only two people who live in Austin are not, because we asked who ran it later, not on purpose. It just randomly happened that way. Then we started talking. Okay, what do you do? And Scott's like, oh, I run a branding and marketing agency. And I was like, really? Because I really need somebody for this product that I'm developing right now.
I'm really bad at that. Can you help me?
Exactly. It's like I've been trying to find the perfect person for this, and you're in Austin. It's like, let's exchange contact and link up when we get back. So we met over lunch. I brought some of my test samples that I had there. I was I think I had 2 or 3 that was set on flavors at that time. And I brought him there, and we just sitting there over lunch. And he started doing his magic genius behind the branding and marketing. Started writing everything on down, and it's like, all right, let's have a call, and I'll tell you what I come up with, and as far as what the actual name was, and et cetera, how we're going to brand it. And we were kind of running through that a couple weeks, and he just approached me. He was like, I really love this. This fits right into the wheelhouse of what I do and who I am personally. He was like, we already connect. We kind of personally were on the same level about what we want out of life and who we are. And it's like, I'd really like to be a part of this. And I mean, in the startup stage, that's kind of a no-brainer. If you find talent and they want to be a part of it and have skin in the game with it, that increases the level of output you can have on anybody, just paying them money, right? So I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do this. And it really, and now I had somebody who was full invested. I could bounce all the great and poor ideas that I had, about the strategic advancements of everything. And so from there, that's how it went. I think um, Scott had everything laid out, and we had a name within like a week or two. We had like kind of probably the 80% solution to what our packaging is right now within that first month. And that's what I'm really good at. I'm with like MVP, like 80% is my threshold. Is like I'm not a perfectionist, and like I hit 80%, let's go. Let's move forward. I'm moving
Yeah.
forward. And like I'll polish it up. I'm still polishing up right now.
Yeah.
So we just launched with it. We're going to do this and kept moving with it.
Yeah, you build out the base, and then other people he can put a bow on it and make it
Yeah,
shiny.
yeah.
So
There's personalities that are good in that. That's not mine.
Yeah, yeah, that's all
so
right.
there's two things you said there. Let's see if I can remember them, and you can tell me your thoughts and if I'm off base. But number one is a lot of people. I talk about this a lot on our show because I've heard on other shows people ask like, how much of your success do you attribute to luck versus hard work? And a lot of people are like, oh, it's 90% luck, 10% hard work. And like somebody on the outside looking in could look at you meeting this guy at this leadership retreat and being like, wow, how lucky that setup happened. But at the end of the day, like if you didn't have anything to bring to the like if it could have just been like, oh, you're from Austin, I'm from Austin, cool, maybe let's hang out sometime, like, and that's kind of probably the end of it, to be honest. But
Mm,
because you had already done some of the work up to that point, you had something to partner on. It wasn't just like uh hey, I have this idea, maybe 10 years from now, or a year from now, whatever, like let's maybe consider that. You had something at that time that you needed help with, and maybe there's an element of luck, sure, that you met this guy at the right time, but had you not done the work, there would be nothing, you'd have nothing to show for it. That's number one.
mhm.
uh what was the
Yeah.
second thing
Luck,
you
luck,
said?
luck doesn't have samples on hand.
Yeah, number two is, I knew I was going to forget the second part.
It's all right. I'll take us in a
Did I
slightly
say
different
Yeah,
something?
direction, and
Kyle,
you can
take
run
us
it
a
back.
different direction. I might come back because there was something good in there that
It's
sparked
all right.
a thought. But go ahead.
So one thing I wanted to kind of just talk about is, what were you doing at the time when this idea originally came to you? Like, prior to the men's retreat and everything like that. And you said you had been in Europe. Like, what was it that you were doing? When the idea came professionally, and then as you transition now.
Okay, so I was professionally. I was working in a telemedicine startup. I was raising capital. I was going out. Had a lot of pilot programs with a lot of government agencies, a lot of private hospitals. So that was going great. After the trip, I was in. So about 2 months or so after the trip, I was still living in North Carolina. So that's where I was when I went on the trip. I was living in North Carolina, and um, the leadership of that startup was not the right fit for me. So I pulled out.
About that train.
Yeah, jumped off the train. The return ticket's a lot cheaper the quicker you get off. Um, so great company, great product, and again, just something that a gap that the world needs. So and I was actually in grad school, and so every time I would do these trip flying out was international program grad school. So we'd all meet at these locations. So it's just fellow students, not with work that I was giving out these products with cohorts, peers there. Um, so I left that company, and I was just like, you know what, like was doing a lot of work in Austin. I really liked Austin, just the vibe of the place, the community, the friends I've made down here. I was like, I'm just going to move to Austin and I'll figure it out and see what happens. Um, Packed up a trailer after coming off of an overseas trip there. And about a week later, I was living in Austin and developing a community. My whole thing with moving was two things, priorities for me were to build a community. I've been in the military, and that was very important to me. So when I retired of the military, one of the things I realized was I no longer had that tight knit community. So I need a community, and to me, that what that looks like is when you're sick, who brings chicken noodle soup over. It's kind of my threshold to what a community is. Not like your bros who don't ever check up on you. And then the second thing was what's ever in my mind, I got to get out of my mind. So I started writing my book, just memoirs of my life is what I was just doing, just to kind of get that all out there. So I was doing that, and the pemmican thing came out of left field when like the first week I was here, went to this barbecue and met a pretty prominent founder in the area and had that conversation. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll go with that too. That's in my head. I'll get it out.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, back to the idea, it's like, it's not, it's fortunate that you meet these people, but you were prepared in meeting these people.
Yeah.
So luck,
Yeah,
luck,
I had,
luck is only as much of a lubricant as you are ready.
it was funny. Like, we're talking about it. He's like, I was telling him the story of this, and he was like, man, I really like to try that. And I was like, well, I have a bar in my truck that's been sitting in the glove box for 2 months. And I went
Yeah.
and got it, and he was like, "Oh, it's pretty good." Been sitting all hot in Austin, Texas heat, and he was like, "Oh
Sure.
yeah, you should go for with this."
Well, the whole idea is that it's going to keep. So
That was the point, right? They did it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do remember what I was going to say, and I think it's on the same vein here. So we're in luck. Then I'm not derailing the conversation. I don't think. But you mentioned that you're an 80% guy, and I think that that's crucial. Maybe people disagree. There's probably some. This may be somewhat controversial, but like everybody wants this perfect business plan. Um, I think we even had a guest on the show a few episodes ago that mentioned the importance of a business plan. But what I like is I think I prefer speed to market because the
Mhm.
market will tell you everything you need to know. And
Mhm.
so 80% perfection and now is in my mind much better than 100% perfection and never. So I love that you were just like, let me get it out of my head. It's not going to be perfect. I can find a guy or two to like help me bring it up to perfection, but for now, I'm going to put it out there because I think the market, the people, the customers will give you the feedback that can help you take it to that next level. Versus like you thinking and imagining what they're thinking, what they want, you put out what you think is right and it took a year longer because you made it, tweaks here and there to get it to what you thought they wanted it to be, and then turns out you were wrong and you wasted all this time and energy. So I don't know if you agree with that, like, and also you I think you said you've only been on the market for what, 3 months now. So have you encountered any of that? Have you gotten customer feedback to know kind of how what the next few months, few years are going to look like for you?
Yeah. So I'll start back with your first right on luck, and then we'll
Yeah,
go since we got um, both thoughts out.
yeah,
Um, Man, luck. You can call it what you want, but I've just throughout my life, I've learned, and we'll get into the spiritual woo woo on it, if you will, but nothing's coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. Pay attention to these things. You could call it luck. I just call it like pay attention. You should do that. Um, and if it excites you more than anything, I kind of another thing I live by is macro and micro excitements. So if I have a micro excitement or something, it leads to my overall agenda in life, in which better basically leave a better mark than I found it in this world. And so whatever excites me, even a little bit on a daily basis, always what I've learned always leads into my purpose and that macro excitement, or will. So I got excited about Pemmican and making bars, right? Not my background, not a CPG founder or any background whatsoever, but it excited me, and I kept taking steps forward and taking actions to it. You got to prepare your fields, right? If you want any type of harvest, if you want to go that route. Um, and it's a true thing. Like you just can't sit there and say, "Well, I'm just not lucky today." We haven't done anything to produce any type of circumstances that you can pay attention to or luck to happen to with. And so, like luck, you look at it both ways. Everything can be fortunate and unfortunate, but the way I look at it is, it should be all directed at a positive direction. Like the same week, I had a family member die, left the company, and had a breakup in a relationship. And I just was like, that's interesting. Okay. And I moved to Austin. I was like, all right, well, I don't know what you're trying to tell me to do, but like, it's not this. So I moved and created a different circumstance for it being. And that action, taking that action, is what it was. You have to take moves, you have to make moves in order for it to have different outcomes.
you do
So
make a valuable point, though, as far as like even just for somebody trying to vet whether or not an idea is something that they could turn into a legitimate business. You kind of touched on the idea of micro versus macro excitements. what's that something that gives you that sense of purpose? And, for the people out there that are sitting on that idea, if you wake up and you go to bed thinking about that thing every night, odds are you're probably going to end up doing something about it. But at the same time, I think that that's the whole value of community, and having that kind of those people to rough out the smooth edges on your idea, because I would contend that young Steve, everything was a macro excitement. So I think we're dialing those back a little bit now.
Well, I love you peeled you saw the connection to my community too. Everything, like if I didn't come here for community, these things wouldn't happen. And I've got dozens of stories where the community that I built being down here helped me along the way. I mean, there was another one the same week that I had this barbecue. I met with, I kind of blasted out to network when I moved down here. Anybody who knows anybody in Austin, make me an introduction. So I had an introduction, went down to a barbecue spot, and it the story and hiking came up on, because he liked to do that kind of thing, and I went into the story, flowed right into it. And he was like, I've got, my family runs an organic meat farm in Mississippi. And I was like, well, yeah, okay, let's do this. And he had an event going on that week. He was in the tech space. So I went to this event, and he was introducing me to everybody as the pemmican guy. Like, oh, that guy I was telling you about, he was making, I was like, I'm not really making these things. But I was
Bit of
like, all right,
imposter syndrome kick in.
yeah, I guess I'm the pemmican guy now. So that was just another thing with the community and everything, like you said, go into it. So yeah, luck that I met this person, and that you can say whatever you want, call it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I did want to mention, or I did want to talk about your sourcing. I think, when you talk about meat, I think that can be a little bit of a hang up for some people. Like, if we've had people on the show with like beef jerky companies and things like that. And I think as a newbie, not knowing much about the meat industry, I could see that being a hurdle you have to climb. Like, well, what do I just go to the grocery store and buy meat off the shelf and then like do my thing with it back at home? Obviously there's some probably not the best price you're going to get if you just like take it off the grocery store shelf. So how did you, I mean, after this introduction was made, how did you then go about sourcing your products? I guess that's the end of my question.
Yeah, so for all the test market, that's exactly what I was doing. I was buying the cheapest meat I possibly could, just to go through recipes and see what it was. That I knew that wasn't going to be my final product and what I wanted to use. It
But
was
to
just
start, just to get started in
always
recipe
doing. Yeah,
formation.
these are all prototypes, if you will.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was just getting them in. But at the same time, I blasted out, cut and paste emails to probably, hundreds of ranches and beef suppliers in the United States. I wanted, I'm a lot of service in the U.S., and I love the U.S., and I wanted to support and grow the ranching industry away from what it is right now with the big four processors and how they're producing our cattle. I've got a family member whose whole family is vegan and vegetarian, specifically because our argument is, well, meat's bad for you. It's like, no, meat's not bad for you. It's how we're raising our meat. It's how we're growing the meat that's bad now. And so I knew I had to have a shift in there and how to put this product out there. So specifically reaching out to grass-fed, grass-finished, regenerative farms out there, which only account for 1.5% of the United States ranches in the United States. And so,
do you care to define just the difference between standard conventional farming and regenerative farming?
So most of ranching cattle is, if we can get into the weeds and how the USDA and federal policy is enacted, like the between the lines, the fine print of what can be grass fed and grass finished. There can be a certain amount of grain fed in there. They can have antibiotics. It can be in feedlots, but fed like hay a certain portion of time. Actually, grass fed, grass finished, pasture raised, regenerative farm is animals living natural, healthy lives, grazing on land, eating grass, essentially. And there's, you go into a lot of the film mark there's a lot of documentaries that are that go into this in a lot of depth, and we probably have time to go for. But basically, like quality of life in animals is what I was looking for. I'm a big believer in like the quality of life in an animal produces quality meat, how it is, and you can go to the nutrient levels and how it's tested to support that versus lot fed, grain fed, or lot fed beef and cattle, which you probably see just the big barren dust fields and hundreds of cattle in these little lots that are just like have grain bins all around them that produce a lot fatter cow. The omega-6 to omega-3 ratios are complete opposite than would be higher in fat, higher in three or higher in sixes versus threes. It should be reversed. And then there's a whole lot of other nutrient profiles that go on along with that grass-fed, grass-finished doesn't have. So specifically, you have to do your homework and your due diligence on these ranches. And that's what I was doing. So I'd find one. Like if you go to a box store and you see grass-finished or grass-fed beef and it's cheap, that's because there's a small little fine print of like the minimal allowable grass fed that you can feed these cattle in order to call it that.
They're skirting the line.
They are very much, and it's cheaper that way. Like it is very expensive, and I feel for the ranchers out there that are trying to do regenerative farming and setting it back because it's very expensive and it takes a longer time. You can go to a market with a head at 12 months. Well, grass-fed, grass-finished is probably 18 to 24 months, and to get a lower yield in your actual beef process. So now they're competing with these fat cows coming in at a year, and now they're trying to produce a leaner cow at twice the length and getting the same price. I don't know if
tough.
you can do that. Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like convenience does not necessarily convert to quality.
Yeah. So we'll go back on like how I'm sourcing this stuff. So what I realized right off the bat is ranchers do not answer emails. That's just kind of like
they're on the ranch.
They're on the ranch. And I started like, man, how come I'm not getting any response from this? And I was like, oh, yeah, they're on the ranch. Yeah. They don't care about their emails. They've got a customer base, and whoever buys what they have at the time. So it's just a lot of calls then, a lot of visiting, and finding brokers that were actually doing that too. A couple brokers that I found that I sourced that I trusted that were taking ranch visits and things like this. And I happened to have a good friend who, after he retired from the military, went out and became a rancher. So he gave me a lot of the scoop on specific things to ask and questions like that. So now our sourcing is, we've got about 5 main ones, but we take meat from numerous, at least dozen, maybe 2 dozen out there. And every time I find a new one, again, we have conversations and buy from them. And it equals out. Like I had one rancher I spoke with last week who actually delivered beef, just like a test out his product and how it performed and everything like that in our process. And some of it's going to be higher than what I'm buying for. But like I told him, like, look, it all equals out. Like I'm going to get really cheap from cheaper price on per pound from one rancher who might produce, a couple hundred head and you only do 12. I know your prices aren't going to be higher, but like it equals out. Like I'll buy what you give me. Like I like your ranch, I like the beef, like give it to me.
That's part of it. Is like you're building a long-term relationship too.
Yeah.
So now, go ahead, Steve.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say. Well, maybe I don't have one. I had one.
The 80% we didn't get onto anyway, so we can that's in some.
Yeah, if you want to touch on that, like kind of this speed to market over slow to market or never to market, but
yeah, having a business degree, a business plan is crucial only for myself, really. And it just kind of, what I've learned, like one of the most, brilliant things I think Mike Tyson has said is like, a plan is only as good as till you get hit in the face. And I learned that from the military. We did extensive planning. It would some of these plannings for these operations mission we do would be days. And what I knew is that we never executed our plan, ever. Thousands of missions. I never executed one plan as we planned it. It was all, fragile, as they're saying. We had to be very flexible. We had to maintain our intent of the plan, but there's going to be ways we have to kind of navigate left and right, and you got to be very flexible along that route you do it. So what I kind of derived in my 80% rule is like, good enough is good enough to take that step where there's, firm footing versus a hole in front of you. And that's usually about 80%, right? And I know that there's going to be, when you get out in the market, there's going to be some type of, change that you're going to have to make. And you can't be afraid to make that change. And so if I just keep it an 80% rule, like, great. Now I developed a business plan I do find important because it's my own strategic plan. And I developed a whole 60-page, to standard business plan and everything that I could present to everybody. And it's helped along the way from investors and HR and whoever I'm going to deal with that wants to go through our mission or our values or vision and everything through the company and how we're going to strategically hit all our checkpoints. It's great. And it's great to have that plan. You just can't be so stuck and adhered to it because you'll never do anything if you can't flex from it. And it's a working document. Like,
Right.
yeah.
So speaking of then going to market, I know you mentioned you guys did a pre-sale. How does one do a pre-sale, especially for a product like this that's not super, I don't know if other companies, if this kind of bar is out there already, or if you guys are sort of
Yeah.
first to market.
Yeah.
So how do you get exposure? How do you make people aware, and how do you get like excitement behind a
I would
bar
say,
that didn't previously exist?
or asking in a different way. What I wanted to ask you is like, what are your next steps? Because whenever I emailed Scott originally, he was like, "Hey, we're about to do our first mass distribution. Get back to me in a couple weeks." So we're excited to catch you really on the upswing.
Mm-hmm.
What the next steps are.
Yeah. That's input genius of your partner that fills the gaps on your weaknesses. And so how do I, it even went back, do we call this pemmican? Like, well, who knows what pemmican is? It's like, do we call it a beef bar? Do we call it meaty bar? What do we call this thing? Like,
I'm
what
gonna be
is it?
honest. While we were talking, 30 minutes ago, I was Googling what pemmican is. So
Yeah. And so that was an initial barrier that we had
yeah,
to figure out. So like if we come with this product, hey, this is the best pemmican out there. Everybody who looks at it is going to be, what is pemmican? I don't know. And the attention span of every human is, 3 to 5 seconds. So we move on, so I was like, all right, well, not me, Scott and I were both, we turmoil over this thing. What do you call something that doesn't exist yet? And so we called it a beef protein bar. Everybody knows what a protein bar. It kind of has that, Indiana Jones switcheroo kind of thing, as we like to say it. We switched what they knew with something different, and they knew beef and they knew protein bar. So input that. Now the pre-sale on it, that was all marketing and branding and having the packaging and idealistic, interesting in the CPG and in the meat snack business. About 85% of purchasers are women. And, that threw me off. I was like, that can't be right. And then I started thinking about, oh, yeah, they buy for the household, they buy for their husbands. So like husbands are out, you do think there's women are usually more conscious in health and nutrition and usually
That's still high. That's higher than what I would have thought.
much high. Yeah. And, statistics are only good as the data you put into it too. So how that could be skewed, but it was more than men. So we didn't want something that was just like, this is man only kind of thing, like go, so it was developing all that banding and palette that we had down there just to make it pleasing and kind of like neutral in between. And then launch the pre-sale of just infotainment, if you will, just getting out as much information as we could on the product and why it's this and why you should buy it kind of thing. And we sold out of that pre-sale. We went 30% above pre-sale in the first month and then just stopped it. We weren't even in production yet. I didn't even have we sold out of our pre-sale before we even had manufacturing equipment in the country. So that moving. So
it's a good problem
then
to have.
it was like, okay, I guess we have something, that people are interested in. The idea people are interested in, and that was healthy nutrition.
Yeah. Speaking of manufacturing, real quick, I don't want to take up your whole day here, but I could talk about this stuff all day. But I got this question, and I guess we'll transition to our listener question. But how did you secure manufacturing? Or are you doing it all in house, or did you have to go somewhere that was already doing manufacturing and kind of teach them how to make your product, or how did that work?
Yeah, so the co-packing route is just that, right? You have to go somewhere else with your product and the mash or ingredients that you have and teach them how to make it. This didn't exist. There's nobody that could do it. Bottom line. So, all right, I guess we'll do it ourselves. So we're bootstrapping this whole thing, in-house manufacturing, figuring out and developing those processes. Something that I geek out on. I love that stuff. So like I'm in the lab, as you call it, which is just kitchen, commercial kitchen. Like
Yeah.
figuring out the process, figuring out these machines, tweaking it, doing this. How okay, we've got to do. They were, the fine tuning of everything was super cool, but it was definitely a moat. So I'm like, let somebody else do a better job, please. Show me how to do a better job because I want to know that. Like, so it's a very very high entry barrier of entry for someone else to come in and replicate this. So it's kind of our first defense, if you will, for it.
Well, real quick before we get to listener question, plug for us where people that are interested in this thing can find you. Where can they buy your products? Where can they find you on social media, and so on?
Yeah, so social media, all the handles there, wildhorizonbar.com on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and go to our website, wildhorizonbar.com. We've got 6 SKUs, 3 flavors. You got the meal size, which is 3 ounce, 26 grams of protein, and then the snack size, which is usually a lot more easier for people to take in one bite. Still got 12 grams of protein, 1.4 ounces.
Yeah, I love that you're basically like, how hungry are you?
Yeah, like me, I eat 2 in a sitting, but apparently people don't do that. Like, yeah.
Kyle does that. Kyle came over once
Yes.
and he was like, "Hey, we just finished a workout. Can I have a protein bar?" And I was like, "Yeah, have a protein bar." Finished that, and he said, "Can I have another protein bar?" I was like, "Bro, I mean, sure, but are you sure?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's me. I will be the full size guy. Don't
So there
worry.
you go. That was a classic example of the market telling us what to do. We had no intention of going smaller, but all feedback back was, I can't eat a whole bar. All right, I got a solution for that.
Yeah, you can't just tell them it'll keep. I mean, it's true, but you can't
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
tell them that.
Yeah.
Well, let's transition here to our listener question. So Kyle and I get through DMs or emails some listener questions that we kind of compile and pick out ones that we think make sense for our guests. So today's question is: I want to be an entrepreneur. I feel like I have a good idea, but I'm nervous that it will run my life. How do you make sure you and your family are taken care of mentally, emotionally, and so on, and not just monetarily as a business owner?
Mm. See, that's such an ambiguous question because there's so many, like I don't know how many case studies on businesses there are. You can read every business book, but every company is different. Every product is different. Every personal lifestyle is different. Your ambitions and everything are all different. So, when I usually, that kind of goes on the the generic question of like, how do I do this, or what's the best advice for an entrepreneur? And at first I was kind of like stumped at it because like I never asked those questions. Like, why don't I ask those questions? And then I realized, well, then that is the answer. The answer pretty much is quit asking people for permission. Like finding out, like, again, the analysis and getting stagnant into it and like getting people to tell you the perfect thing to do for your idea is kind of, there's no answer out there. It's your idea. Like you have this product, like you kind of, if it doesn't exist, and that's kind of like where you're problem solving skills have to come into play. It was like, well, make it exist. It's like, how do you have to do that? Find the right people. Like, I don't know everything, but I can find somebody who knows somebody. You have to do, I mean, but then there are the mechanics on maintaining a living, and you got to do the black and white business plan and do your cogs and do all your analysis, what your market is going to be, and find your price elasticity and do all the business stuff, right? To find out, is this viable? And then numbers don't lie on that. So
Mm.
if it makes it viable, and then you can kind of have economies to scale with it, go forward, do it.
All about balance.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like I've recently started a vending machine business, for example, and I think I've been thinking about this question too. Like, I think it's almost just it's like how fast do you want to grow? How hard do you want to go? And if you've got other responsibilities, like there's nothing wrong with slow growth.
Hmm.
So I've chosen that route. I've chosen to take it slow so that I'm not neglecting my kids. I'm not neglecting my wife. I'm, choosing to spend evenings with them rather than working on the business because I value my family time. I value my, getting to raise my kids. Now, if you're single and don't have kids, like go. There's nothing holding you back. My advice is just go. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with slow growth if you value, other things.
Yep.
Yeah, completely agree. Every situation is different, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing is like, advice is designed to be helpful, but you're asking someone else from their perspective and applying all things through their filters, their opinions, their circumstances, and those don't necessarily match up with yours. So you just have to kind of take what tidbits of wisdom you can get and apply it to your situation.
not a direct answer to the question, but I've never.
No,
But it's
it's
a
all
good
right.
it's a no, but it's a valid answer. I think, your life experience is your life experience. And so like your answer is based on what you've lived, your own lived experience, and everybody's different. So everybody would have a different answer, and everybody can choose to go a different route because, and we've said it a number of times on this show because we've had different answers to the same questions. And that's, there's not one route to success. That, we've had similar products on this show, similar businesses on this show, and they've done things completely different. And it's like, hey, it's kind of cool to see that you didn't do things the same way, yet you're still on the route to success. And there's no one right way to do things.
That is a great takeaway to
Yeah.
capture all that. Like, same businesses, different processes, great outcomes. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of at the core of what we like to talk about on the show is it's like there's not one path to success, but one true way that you won't succeed is if you don't try. So
yeah,
that's a big takeaway
was it
for
thought
us.
minus action equals zero? I think I've heard someone say that recently.
Yeah.
Wait, say it one more
Well,
time.
Thought minus action equals zero.
I like it.
yeah, net zero. Well, Ethan, we appreciate your time. We're super excited for you as you get going here, as you really start getting traction. You're on the train and it doesn't sound like you have another ticket to go anywhere else right
No,
now.
no.
So
Yeah.
we're excited to see where you're going. We're rooting you on. We wish you nothing but continued success.
Appreciate it, Kyle. Thank you very much, Steve.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Thanks for hopping on with us.
Great talking to you guys.